Hello, hello. Can anyone hear me? Let me know if you could hear me. Let me see. Everything's on. On. It should be good. Hello, everyone. I want to welcome you to today's live. It's been a while since I've been here, and I'm so excited to be here. I'm showing up with a brand new energy, a brand new confidence, and I can't wait to lead you on your journey for this month's theme. This month's theme is all about the fundamentals of self-awareness, which is about understanding yourself and the role of the ego and how the two kind of interact. So you can't have one without the other. So I want to welcome you. And the purpose of this is to really help you understand how important self-awareness is to your spiritual growth and your personal growth in general. So I just really want to start there and go back to basics and revisit this fundamental topic. If you haven't already, please download the workbook that goes with the self-awareness theme. It's for developing your self-awareness, and you could use it in tandem with this training. They don't go hand in hand completely, but they do touch on each other. So yeah, that's in the link below in the description. So please download that when you get a chance and complete it at your leisure. It'll only help you on this journey. So what is self-awareness? Self-awareness is understanding yourself, your thoughts, your beliefs, your own character, your feelings, and your motives, and even your desires, what you want in life, and kind of what's programmed to go against that. So when we define self-awareness, we're really starting with our awareness of our environment and how it feels in our bodies. So that's relating our environment through our senses and how we perceive the world and what we project into reality. And these senses ultimately create sensations that turn into feelings, and then those feelings turn into emotions. And when we don't have self-awareness, these feelings could really drive our behavior because we don't know what to do with them. A lot of the times we're not taught how to understand them or even express them. And so when we're unconscious of this, we're unconscious of the behaviors that are associated with these emotions and these sensations and how we deal with them. When we expand our self-awareness, it's becoming conscious of this behavior, our thoughts, our perceptions, and then the actions that are ultimately a result of these perceptions and these thoughts. So when you cultivate self-awareness, it's also being aware of not just the positive feelings and responses that you have, but also the negative ones and how they really drive your behavior. So that's why it's important to start to develop self-awareness, because it really can impact your life, your relationships, your growth, everything. So when we define self-awareness and we recognize our feelings, then we begin to recognize our motives and what are actual desires when it comes to those motives. So that's why it's crucial for spiritual growth, because from there we can identify our strengths and our weaknesses and our values and beliefs and how we operate in congruence with those values and beliefs. And a lot of the time we're holding values and beliefs that really don't belong to us. They're just been something that was developed over time, that you picked up from other people, your peers, your family, your friends, your teachers, role models you've had, your neighbors even have an impact on the values and beliefs that you hold. And as we get older and we develop our own sense of self, with that self-awareness partnered with that, then we become aware of what doesn't belong and what does belong. And that's why it is crucial to start to develop that self-awareness. When you do this and you start to really analyze your behavior and the impact it has on others, you can make changes with that self-awareness and you can begin to operate in a different way. So from there, you'll experience improved relationships, better decision making, emotional regulation and alignment with your goals and your desires, the ones that you want to have, and not what's expected of you. And as you become more self-aware, you'll realize that what doesn't feel good and what does feel good is in direct correlation with the values and beliefs that you want to hold and the ones that you don't want to hold. And I'm sorry, I'm a little like out of breath. I'm pregnant, and that's just part of the symptoms of being pregnant. So excuse me if I'm quite out of breath or breathy. So when it comes to understanding self-awareness and the motives and desires behind it, why do people avoid self-awareness, and why are like 80% of the whole world, which is a factual statistic, is 80% of the world actually operates from unconscious awareness, so or unconscious behavior, and they lack self-awareness. So why people avoid this, first and foremost, is the societal pressures and the expectations that we have. And a lot of the time we grow up wanting to appease people as opposed to living in a way that is in alignment with our own unique sense of self. So that's first and foremost, is that pressure is so great and so large that building the self-awareness and how maybe you don't agree with it or you don't want to live this way doesn't really help you, because you're not sure how to change it. You're not sure how to work against the grain and do things on your own accord, by your own direction and your own desires. Like maybe you don't want to work the 9 to 5 rat race or go to college and have a family and all that, but it's expected of you. So you have to shove that self-awareness down, otherwise it eats you alive. And unfortunately, despite being aware of it or not, if you shove it down, it will eat you alive. But that's a topic for another day. So that is the first reason why people avoid self-awareness. And then the second one that ties into that is a fear of uncomfortable truth. So when we expand on our self-awareness, we start to realize how we're holding ourselves back, or maybe like the shadow aspects of ourselves that we don't want to look at because it's uncomfortable, because we feel great shame when it comes to becoming aware of our own faults and how it impacts our relationships, and then taking responsibility and accountability with that shame is so hard. So it's easier for people to just turn away from the parts that they deem as shameful or what they've been taught to be shameful than it is to confront it and change it, because of the sensations and feelings that come up when we start to examine these things, and maybe why they even are programmed into us to begin with. Maybe you had childhood trauma, maybe you went through some events that made you put on an armor that maybe pushes people back. It's more of like an antisocial behavior. So when you start to examine how your behavior impacts relationships, that could bring up a lot of shame if you have dysfunctional tendencies in relationships. And I'm not saying that you have to take accountability for everything that's wrong in your life or how people treat you, but it really does start with your own self-awareness and how you contribute to those dynamics, whether you're the abuser or the victim or whatever you want to call it. So even if we become aware of these things and we're willing to work on them, it begins to be really hard to address these things, because just because you're aware of it, it doesn't mean you know how to address it or how to even change it or how to go back and really repair relationships with a new sense of self, with new thoughts, and trying to change your behavior to be more incongruent with how you want to show up. And that's when it comes back to values. What do you value? Well, I value peace. I value honesty. I value healthy relationships that aren't codependent. I value boundaries. But you could be living in a completely different polarizing way where you have no boundaries and you have no control over your emotional dysregulation, and you have no control over your impulsive behavior and your reactions to things as opposed to your responses to things. So without help or any guidance, and that's why I'm here and why other mental health professionals do their thing, is to help you become aware of these things, how to identify them, and then how to change them and how to take action from there. A lot of people don't know how, even if they are aware, And again, that shame comes up because you're not sure of how to change it, and you can't stop your self-sabotage or your dysfunctional relationships or how you react to things despite this awareness. And then that awareness starts to create a lot of shame and a lot of guilt, and then could lead into a spiral of just self-deprecating thoughts and behaviors and beliefs that don't really help us, or they impact our mental health. And so I want you to be assured that with people like me, we're here to help you with that change. So even if you have self-awareness and you don't know how to change, you're in the right place. That guide in the description will really help you. So please download that. So why is self-awareness so important, and how can you use it to manifest your desires and what you want in your dream life, or a better relationship, or more friends, or more money, or more abundance in general? That is the power of self-awareness, and why it's so important to visit this on a fundamental level, because it really is the cornerstone of manifestation, because you learn to rewrite limiting beliefs, you learn to operate in a different way, you learn to realize what your reactions are and how you could change that and respond to things differently. So that is the centerfold of manifestation, is really like becoming aware of the limiting paradigms that you're perpetuating into your reality, and then taking the quick, simple actions to change that, to manifest the things that you want. And that's why self-awareness is so important, and how powerful it can be with manifestation. So when you start to live in alignment with how you want to live, like I mentioned a couple of minutes ago, when you value certain things like boundaries and healthy relationships and autonomy and independence and freedom, and you're not living in congruence with that, it's important to begin to align yourself with how you want to live by taking action and starting to live in congruence with the things that you value, like honesty, integrity, accountability, and things like that. So when you start to shift from living out of congruence into congruence, you are aligning yourself with your true desires and the things that you want to manifest. And that's when manifestation becomes simple and easy and quick, because you're so in alignment with what feels good and what feels natural to you, as opposed to what's expected of you. So that's how self-awareness and manifestation are super powerful. And it is important to have this self-awareness so you have clarity of what your direction is and where you want to go, how you need to act to get there, who you need to be to get there. And it really helps you, give you clarity and direction and the intentions you need to set in order to create that reality. And you can't do that without having self-awareness to begin with. So that's pretty much the breakdown of what self-awareness is and why it's so important, but also just how it really impacts your life, and how not having self-awareness can impact your life. So I really just wanted to break that down, and the fundamentals of self-awareness, and why it's so important on a personal level for growth and spiritual development and personal development, but also when it comes to manifesting the things you want, living in alignment, and the law of attraction. So now that that's done, I can breathe a little bit. I want to go over a quick exercise that will really help you with these things to move forward and have a personalized approach to manifestation using self-awareness. So first, it would be to visualize your highest self and the desired outcomes you want to have. So that means pretty much what future you, if what you align with and what you manifest comes true, your future you is already living that. So you want to envision future you living that life. What do they look like? What do they feel like? What age are they? How do they show up? How is it different from how you're showing up now? Do they have different qualities than you do? Do they have different values than you do? And from there, you can begin to analyze the limiting beliefs that come out when it comes to visualization and trying to figure out that higher version of yourself who has what you want to have. And I want you to know that once you start living that way, that version of you becomes the future version of you. And you will have those things because future you already has it. So I want you to work from like a backwards top down approach when it comes to visualization and really trying to feel how you feel in the future right now. And we do that with visualization. So I want you to maybe take a moment to visualize and start to just become aware and notice what comes up for you, recognizing what your mind says when you start to visualize these things, because there will be, especially if you're new to this, there will be times where you're trying to visualize or you're trying to meditate or you're trying to even take action in a different way. And you'll start to hear this nagging critical voice that is literally trying to keep you safe. And that's the ego. And I'll touch on that in a minute as we get closer to the end of this live topic. But when you identify these things by becoming consciously aware of them, you can start to begin to challenge them. So I want to give you an example of what a limiting belief might sound like. And it would be like, I'm not good enough. I'll never do this. This isn't something meant for me. Oh, this is only for people who are like this. Da, 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 da. Not all of that is noise. Even if some of them like make perfect sense, or it's been how you've been operating this entire time, and what usually comes up for you in these cycles that self-perpetuate, and you have a limiting belief, and then you live in congruence with that limiting beliefs, and then that limiting belief manifests in reality, and then it really becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy because it's validating those limiting beliefs. So I want you to realize, like, that's the ego, and the ego is the mind, and we are not our mind. Like I said, I'll touch on that in a second. But these limiting beliefs really come from like external sources, and really don't resonate, and they don't feel good because they're not coming from your heart and from your actual perception of reality, or the one that you want to hold. So you're hearing things from people that have also wanted to live a life a certain way, but kept it inside, held themselves back, and never pursued it so that they could stay safe, because there's whatever risk is attached to whatever you want to do. Oh, I don't have enough time. I'm not talented enough. I'm not smart enough. Da, 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 da. Those are usually thoughts that come out from being criticized your whole life by people who are living their own limiting beliefs and perpetuating their own limiting paradigms. So cultivate that self-awareness and really try to become aware of these thoughts that come up when you try to change and to take action in a different way, and just learn to just become aware. You don't have to shove them down. You don't have to get rid of them. You just have to start to become aware of them. And it will bring up sensations that make you uncomfortable, or they might feel scary, but literally that's all they are. They're just feelings. They're just reactions to whatever these limiting beliefs are conjuring up inside of you. So when you learn to detach from those limiting beliefs, and you learn to externalize them and realize they came from old programming, from old people like in your life, especially like old school people, like maybe your grandparents, maybe your teachers, maybe they were hypercritical of you and never believed in you. So we learn to internalize those things. When we become aware of them, we can begin to externalize those things and realize they are not what we want to believe. They are not our reality. They are not what we actually are, because it's just noise. It's literally just noise. So I want you to think of a recent challenge that you went through and identify the belief that held you back from overcoming that challenge. Alternatively, you could also think of a challenge where you did overcome it and it did work out for you, and it resulted in the result that you wanted. And that is anti-proof. Like, there's proof that your limiting belief is real, and then there's anti-proof to realize that your limiting belief isn't real. And when you begin to reflect on your past and how you've overcome so many challenges in your life, you'll realize how much power and ability you actually do have. So I want you to think of a time where you overcame a challenge and what came up for you after, and how maybe you could repeat that in the future, or how things have held you back before, and how true does that limiting belief that came up that stopped you feel when you actually examine it, when you actually try to internalize it? Does it bounce off, or does it feel true? Does it feel right? And I could bet like 99% of the time, the beliefs you have about yourself, when you are detaching yourself from them and just becoming conscious of them, you'll start to realize it doesn't feel right. And that beliefs that are empowering, like your capacity to achieve, does feel more right, and it feels good. And we want to keep going after those feelings. And that's why becoming aware of these limiting beliefs and how they come up when we're achieving or when we're not. And it's important to dissect those and analyze them so that we can move forward and operate in a different way. Because there's no such thing as I can't or the inability to do things. We all have the same infinite potential. So I want you to realize, and I keep saying this, limiting thoughts are just noise. Just become aware of the noise and then start to tune it out and turn it down, because it's literally that. It does not say anything about your ability. We all have the ability to achieve. And I want to discuss that in my next point when we talk about fixed versus growth mindsets. And our mindset really drives our behavior. And obviously, a fixed mindset is very rigid, it's very critical, it's very stuck, and it can't expand in any way ever. And a lot of people are stuck. I was stuck in a fixed mindset. So I want you to become aware of that so that you can start to cultivate a growth mindset, because that's what we all have. The mind, according to neuroscience, is very plastic, it's very moldable, and it could always form new thoughts, new ways of being, and just new ways of operating. Essentially, it's our operating system, and we can install new software to grow that brain in a different way. So when we get out of that fixed mindset that I'm not good enough, I can never achieve, yada yada yada, it's BS, because we all have the ability to cultivate a growth mindset, because we all have that same infinite potential. So a fixed mindset, like I said, is not, I'm not good enough, and it's super critical and it's super negative. And it might sound like a parent that was really, really just not encouraging of you when you were growing up. And that is ego dominant. Whereas a growth mindset is very higher self dominant. It's very outside of us in a higher dimension. You could even call it like God. And it's really encouraging, like a very, very supportive parent who's like, you got this, you can do this, there's no such thing as failure, everything is a learning opportunity. And it is. And that's a growth mindset. And you could see how that can expand and expand and expand, because there's no limit to growth, there's no ceiling, there's no stopper on this. It literally is. You could, once you start cultivating a growth mindset, you could take it from a little seed into a ginormous beanstalk that goes up into the heavens. And so I really want you to realize that being fixed is literally just the ego controlling your mind and keeping you contained in that container, that there's no room to grow. It's rigid, and it might feel safe, but it doesn't feel good at the end of the day. And chasing after new things might be scary and they might be uncomfortable at first, but once you overcome that and you're doing it and you're achieving, it feels so much better than constantly being stuck in that rigid, fixed mindset with no room to grow. So to begin to start to cultivate a growth mindset, I really just want you to start celebrating yourself and celebrating those small successes, no matter what they are, even if it's just small things in the day that where you make different changes, or you think different things, or you challenge certain thoughts, or you respond instead of you react to. Like, these are all things to celebrate. Any way that you're living in your higher power, or living your purpose, or living in a way that feels good to you, I want you to celebrate those, because that is literally what success is. Success isn't like millions of dollars and living on a beach and all that. It's literally living life how you want to live and feeling good about it. And that looks different for everyone. So I really, really want you to just look at your own day-to-day life and start moving in a different way. Even becoming conscious of these things is something to celebrate. If you have a hard time getting out of bed and you got up and you brushed your teeth and you showered and you had a good day, celebrate that. That is how you cultivate these things. I don't care what it is, just celebrate it. If it feels good and you're proud of it, celebrate it. So when we challenge these things by celebrating them, we start to counteract the nature of our ego. And unfortunately, the ego gets a really bad rap. I like the ego. I like to consider it a friend because it really is just your mind. In general, it is your mind, and your mind is you. It's your human form that controls your whole body, and your higher self is outside your mind. And you can't be more spiritual than a human being, and you can't be more human being than spiritual. They're kind of like two and two of the same thing, and one gets over what's the word? I can't think of the word, but the ego is it really just has a bad rap, and the higher self is always looked out and put on a pedestal, and they just need to work together. They're actually friends, because your ego is your mind, and your mind is you. It holds your memories, it holds your characteristics, it holds your beliefs and your values, what you like and what you don't like, and it's designed to keep you safe, and that's why it keeps you from risk. That's why it tries to convince you that you can't do things, because it really just wants to feel safe and comfortable, and any sort of change does not feel comfortable. But when we look at the ego and why it keeps us safe, it was designed originally to keep us out of danger, to stop us from getting killed, to stop us from touching the fire or eating the poisonous berries. And when we learn to get in touch with our ego and we see it as our friend, we can begin to work in tandem with it and view it as a teamwork effort. So it's keeping you safe, but it's also your job to soothe it when it's working too hard to keep you safe, or it's really, really like not advantageous to keep you in that comfort zone, and you want that positive growth and that challenge that comes with it, so that you can use the ego to work in line with it. So your job is to soothe it, tell it that it's safe and that you're working together. And when you begin to do that, you'll realize that the soothing feels good. And then that ego will start to realize that it's safe to move forward, and it will guide you towards the things that you want, because it is your identity, and your identity holds your motives and your desires. And that's what we use to visualize the future. So it makes sense to utilize the power of the ego to guide you towards your motives once you start to really configure in your mind the beliefs that you want to have, how you want to operate, how you want to react to things, the relationships you want to have, and all that. So you're working in tandem with the ego's motives and desires to keep you safe, and your hidden desires, and using the higher self to achieve those desires, and using your intuition and your senses together to guide you there. So when you soothe it and you work together with the ego, it really starts to build that self-esteem when it's balanced with these two aspects, as opposed to letting one or the other control you. Because one could lead to grandiosity when you're trying to shove your ego down and you're listening to your own senses and what your gut and your mind are telling you, because the two are connected. And then your intuition is in control, and you're going flying off the handle, and you have no clarity and no direction, because you're shoving your ego down, and your ego screaming at you, trying to tell you you're going the wrong way. You're going the wrong way. So when you use the two, it's very, very balanced, and you build the self-esteem that comes with that balance, knowing that you could trust yourself and that you have a great sense of self and you have a good self-image, because your ego is a part of that, and you're working on cultivating your fixed mindset. So that's how the ego and the higher self work together, so that you could start working as a team, as opposed to the ego being an enemy that has to die. I hate the word ego death. I don't believe in it, because it will always be a part of us. It's always a part of our mind, and we need to realize it's a part of us. And when we love ourselves completely, that includes our human aspect, that includes our ego as well. So that's the end of that. So for the consequences of neglecting self-awareness as we wrap this up is recognizing the impact of turning away from yourself, which really does not do yourself any service, especially if you are living up to the expectations of others. That turns into chronic people pleasing, and that people pleasing doesn't cultivate actually good feelings aside from managing this image of someone who's happy to help and happy to serve, but always neglecting your own needs, which turns into resentment and burnout at the end. So that's one of the consequences of neglecting self-awareness and turning away from yourself. The other is that those feelings will begin to lead to shame and guilt and stagnation and even anxiety because you're so bent on managing the perception of others and what they think of you and what they'll think if you do things outside of what's expected to you, or you pursue dreams that maybe people think are unrealistic. And so when you live in not in congruence with your self-awareness and everything that comes with it, and becoming conscious of these things, you shove it down, and then you just suffer because those feelings are going to start compounding and expanding into more and more stress and tension in your body, which doesn't feel good. And those feelings, like I said, will turn into emotions, which are the feelings are emotions of shame and guilt and anger and resentment and even stagnation. And as a result of that, you'll miss out on the things that you do want, and you'll miss out on the opportunities that will come up that will lead you to the things that you want, those stepping stones that our intuition picks up on when we're actually living in congruence with how we want and our desires and our ultimate goals and to achieve what we want to achieve. So you will miss out on the opportunities that connect you to those things because you're ignoring the signals that your ego and your higher self are giving to you because you're so bent on living life in either your comfort zone or how people expect you to live, or to do things in a way that makes sense or is realistic. So you won't grow. You'll just stay stuck. And those are the consequences of neglecting self-awareness. Excuse me. So to help overcome this and make your life easier, you get to use rituals and practices that make your life easier, like reflecting, self-reflection, taking time to actually like tune into yourself, how you're feeling, keeping track of your moods every day. And then using meditation. Like meditation is a tool for self-awareness, and it's really hard for people to meditate, and especially if you're not self-aware really, or you're working on your self-awareness, or you want to cultivate self-awareness, you're most likely not meditating or practicing mindfulness in any way. So I want you to start to practice these things, but without giving into what the ego tells you. Like, I have monkey brain, I have too much trauma, oh, too much uncomfortable stuff comes up for me, I can't control my thoughts, I can't shut my brain up. Like this is the ego, this is the noise that comes up to stop you from doing things that feel uncomfortable. And meditation can feel uncomfortable if you have all these feelings of shame, or you have like reoccurring memories or ruminations of past traumas and stuff. It's not to shove these things down or make them go away, because like I said, that just, it doesn't process them, and it just gets stuck, and it doesn't feel good because it'll begin to compound. So I want you to realize that it's not your job to control your thoughts or to make them go away. It is to notice them and to let them just go by, instead of like having a memory come up and then getting stuck and that memory plays out. You're literally just letting the blip come up, and then it goes away like a leaf on a stream and floats. And then the next one comes up and it's like a leaf or a cloud in the sky, and it just floats. And you can just become aware of it, as opposed to like grabbing onto these things and then playing them out, and then picking another one and then playing it out, and then really like feeling uncomfortable or dysregulated because you're latching onto it and you're letting that unconscious autopilot take over. So I want, even if that does happen, it's okay. You just let it go. You just come back to the present body, your breath. Your breath is always your guide, because that's your sign of being alive. And when you really, really have something to anchor onto, it makes it harder for your mind to anchor onto those thoughts that come up. So your breath or your heartbeat, or even things that you could put in your hands, like fidget spinners, the tactile senses could really be a good distraction when you find yourself latching onto these things and going into unconscious repeating patterns. So your whole job is to literally just to train your mind to become aware of them, to externalize them. So it's looking like you're watching these from a screen as opposed to playing out in your mind. So that's just something to really become aware of, is just the thoughts that come up in your day-to-day life, so that when you do meditate, you could apply that same principle and just start to become aware. And it takes practice. This is something you develop, like a growth mindset. All of this takes practice. It all takes time, because your brain needs that repetition to form those new pathways so that you could mold your brain how you want it to be. And it takes time for that to shift. So practicing mindfulness during the day and becoming aware of your thoughts and your patterns and your beliefs, and even your mood, your reactions, your responses, even the feelings that come up during certain circumstances, that is the start to meditation. So when you practice that during the day, it's a lot easier for when you're actually still and you have less noise and less distractions and less stimuli, and no coping methods to keep you distracted, like you're scrolling on your phone. So if meditation is too hard, try to do it in the day without going into mindfulness practices, because those are essentially the same thing. It's like a waking meditation, let's call it that. So when you begin to just become aware, just practice that awareness during the day, so that when you're still doing your meditation, it's not as overwhelming and it's not as hard to calm or quiet those thoughts down. So an alternative to add on to this is to also spend 5 minutes each day journaling about your day. Anything that comes up, you could write a conscious stream that comes up. You could journal how your mood is, like I said, what happened during the day and your reactions to things. If you use that workbook I gave you, it will give you templates that help you log your day, the moods you have, and what you're doing during those things that create the mood and the behavior that's associated with it. And when you write that in detail, it really gives you an outside look of what you're doing and what's controlling your day and what's controlling your behavior. And then from there, you could start to make different choices. But that observation piece and that becoming aware of things and conscious of things is the perfect start. And it is so profound and it is so powerful. And that is why self-awareness is so powerful. So in conclusion, some key takeaways are, is I really want to reinforce the noise of your mind and all these beliefs that come up that keep you stuck or overwhelmed or keep you safe and doing things that you've always done and not living in any different way or growing in any way is just noise. If you learn to become conscious of it, and then you start to examine it, you'll realize it's either really old programming that you're sick and tired of and you don't want to live by anymore, or it's programming that does not belong to you. And 99% of the time, it's both. It's both. And you don't have to put them into categories, but you'll realize how these things really don't feel right. They're not in alignment with how you want to live and how your character is in this world, like the perceptions you want to hold, like everyone's mean and horrible, whereas everyone's really just living their own life and trying to get by and trying to survive. And just practice becoming aware of that noise. And the ego is really, really critical, like I said, whereas the higher self is very supportive. So when you start to become conscious of these things, the thoughts and beliefs will feel super critical, or your ego, and the ones that are very calm and no, that doesn't feel right, like that's not true, is your higher self. And you can begin to divide the two and realize which ones are actually in alignment or which ones are actually your ego just trying to keep you safe, essentially. And then you could soothe your ego. Even if those thoughts aren't yours, you could soothe it and tell them it's time to move on. We're living life this way with our actual values, and you are safe to do so because you are always safe and you could trust yourself. So to summarize, why self-awareness is so important is understanding yourself and your motives, what you truly want and how to manifest it, the limiting beliefs that get in the way, whether you have a fixed or growth mindset, whether the ego is in control or how quiet your intuition is because you shoved it down by listening to your ego too much, and the consequences of not working on these things and not challenging these limiting beliefs and staying in your comfort zone. Even if you really like the feelings of safety and comfort and you're okay with just staying put where you are, it's still worth examining how this limits you and how it ultimately feels as time goes by, because it's the only resource that's not infinite in this world. And so when we allow our ego to just control us, or we avoid self-awareness in general, it's worth examining what the implications of those are, what the consequences of those are. If you don't want to address your self-awareness yet and your shadow side, it's worth looking at how that's going to affect your life, your relationships, your career, how far you go, what you do, what you achieve. And I don't want you to get to the end of your life feeling like you've wasted it because you've spent so much time playing it safe and not taking any risks. And risk ultimately leads to growth. Okay? You are safe no matter what, no matter the outcome. Taking that risk could either work out or it doesn't. That's life. But I want you to know ultimately you are safe and you have the capacity to grow infinitely. So just work on becoming aware of the ways that you keep yourself limited, because you're not doing yourself any favors. So please, 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 please download that guide. It will be super helpful. And I really, really want you to just start cultivating this self-awareness. Just start there. Just start working on becoming conscious and working with yourself with compassion and patience, and you will go so much further than the average person does. And I'm here to help each and every one of you. So if you need more help, please reach out, or please feel free to join my low-cost $7 a month membership, and I will help you in there as well with my proven method of growing and cultivating self-awareness and how that can change your life and using that to change your life. So feel free to download the workbook in the description, as well as enjoy a 7-day free trial of my consciousness upgrade method membership in the description as well. I love you so much. Thank you. Bye.